Beyond the Gates spoilers tease that the seemingly idyllic veneer of Leslie and Bill's lives hides a dark, twisted history that binds them together in ways far more sinister than anyone could imagine. From the moment Hayley, bright-eyed and brimming with hope, walked into Bill's opulent world, she was unknowingly setting herself on a collision course with secrets that had festered for years. Everyone in their circle believed that Bill, a successful entrepreneur with a magnetic charm, and Leslie, his confidant and business partner, shared only a deep friendship and mutual business aspirations. Yet beneath the glossy surface lay a partnership forged in blood, a crime that neither had ever fully confessed, a past that would soon shatter Hayley's trust and force her to seek a divorce just months into her marriage with Bill. In the early days, Bill and Leslie had met as young adults in a dingy backroom of an underground poker club, both chasing the same poker legend who owed them each a substantial debt. Bill, then a scrappy drifter with determination in his eyes, and Leslie, a poised yet enigmatic figure with a calculating mind, recognized in each other a shared hunger for more than what life had given them. Their alliance began with whispered strategies over cheap whiskey and dim lights, and soon evolved into something more ominous. When Hayley's brother, Marcus, a promising journalist investigating corruption, started asking too many questions about Leslie's murky finances, Bill and Leslie understood that Marcus threatened to expose not only their illegal gambling operations, but also a far graver secret: their involvement in a hit-and-run accident that had claimed the life of an innocent teenager years earlier. Convinced that Marcus's pursuit of truth would unearth the past, they decided ruthless action was the only way to silence him. On a rain-soaked evening, Marcus found himself cornered in his car by Bill and Leslie in an isolated alleyway. The glistening pavement reflected the red and blue of Leslie's stolen police cruiser as she slid behind the wheel of her brother's car, blocking Marcus's escape. Bill, seething with panic and desperation, approached the driver's side window. He snarled that Marcus had no right to pry into their affairs, that some truths were better dead. When Marcus reached for his phone to record their confession, Bill smashed his hand with a heavy, leather-bound ledger, the same one that contained incriminating financial ledgers. The ledger slid from his grip, pages fluttering in the cold wind, as Marcus gasped for breath. In the struggle that followed, Bill slammed the car door shut on Marcus's arm, crushing bone beneath metal. Leslie, cold and detached, stood by watching the chaos unfold, until a final push sent the car rolling backward, tumbling down the slope and careening into a tree. The scene was gruesome: shattered glass, twisted metal, and Marcus's lifeless body sprawled as if offering a silent testament to their crime. Unable to risk any witnesses, Bill and Leslie staged the accident as a drunk driver collision, erasing Marcus's phone and planting traces of alcohol in his system. The local police, unaware of Leslie's authority and Bill's careful manipulations, closed the case without further question, deeming it a tragic but ordinary accident. Yet that night, the blood of an innocent teenager seeped into Bill and Leslie's souls, forging an unholy bond cemented by shared guilt. Years passed and Bill's fortune soared. He built a reputation as a savvy businessman, investing in real estate and burgeoning tech startups, while Leslie became his trusted advisor and chief operating officer. Together, they constructed a world where they could hide the horrific stain of that fateful night behind skyscrapers and philanthropy. When Hayley, a bright, compassionate woman with a background in nonprofit work, met Bill at a charity gala, she saw only a man of integrity, a philanthropist whose donations to battered women's shelters and children's hospitals knew no bounds. Leslie, too, welcomed Hayley with a warm, almost sisterly affection, helping her refine her public persona and integrate smoothly into Bill's social circles. Hayley, enchanted by Bill's generosity and Leslie's gracious mentorship, began to believe she had found the stability and love she had always sought. Each evening she spent in Bill's grand home, she admired the polished oak floors, the the soaring ceilings adorned with crystal chandeliers, and the art that lined the walls, art that Hayley presumed was purchased to support budding artists, not as a means to conceal illicit gains. Shortly after their whirlwind romance, Bill surprised Hayley with an intimate beachfront wedding. The ceremony was suffused with salt-kissed breezes and pastel dusk light as Hayley walked down a candlelit aisle toward Bill, her heart overflowing with devotion. Leslie stood at Bill's side, a radiant smile on her lips, her hand clasped over her own heart as if the happiness stung her with an unspoken regret. No one but the groomsmen noticed that Leslie's gaze lingered on Bill with something darker than affection, something that whispered of unfinished business between them. Hayley's wedding gift to Bill was a scrapbook of their early days, filled with glossy photographs and little notes they had exchanged. Hayley believed this present would endear her to Leslie, but instead, it evoked a cold hush in Leslie's eyes, as though those pages reminded her of Bill's past loyalty to someone else, a loyalty that had cost them both dearly. In that moment, Hayley remained blissfully ignorant of the warning sign etched across Leslie's face. For months after the wedding, Hayley relished domestic bliss, cozy dinners by the fireplace, walks along moonlit beaches, and whispered confessions of future dreams. Yet beneath the glittering surface, cracks began to emerge. Bill's phone notifications chimed frequently at odd hours. He would rush from her side, glancing over his shoulder with guilt-laden eyes and murmuring about work emergencies that kept him away for extended periods. Hayley, trusting but naturally perceptive, chalked it up to the demands of a growing business empire. Meanwhile, Leslie's visits became more frequent. Initially presenting herself as a supportive sister-in-law, Leslie brought flowers, offered to help with social engagements, and even volunteered to oversee charitable events in Hayley's honor. But after one particularly tense dinner, Hayley noticed Leslie slipping out of the dining room with a folded envelope from Bill's, an envelope that Leslie refused to explain when questioned. The nerve of Leslie's evasiveness planted a seed of doubt in Hayley's mind, but she dismissed it, attributing the moment to her own anxieties about being the new wife. As days turned into weeks, Hayley began to stumble across inconsistencies. She found a set of car keys she didn't recognize in Bill's coat pocket, keys to a car she had never seen, a car that seemed older, with scribbled license plate numbers. When she asked Bill about them late one night, he claimed they belonged to a friend picking up an old engine from his garage. Hayley hesitated to press him further, not wanting to appear insecure. But late one evening, consumed by a nagging sense of foreboding, she snuck into Bill's study, a room she had never entered before. The door was slightly ajar, as though waiting for her. Inside, she discovered a collection of unsent letters tucked into a locked drawer, all addressed to Marcus, framed as apologies and confessions, each letter more agonizing than the last. "I am sorry I let you get into that car. I never meant for things to end that way. I'm haunted by your face every time I close my eyes." Hayley's heart thundered as she scanned the pages, realizing Marcus was Hayley's own brother who had gone missing years ago under murky circumstances. Her pulse quickened when she noticed one letter addressed not just to Marcus, but also containing lines about our plan to protect the family empire and ensuring no one interferes with the truth. The implication was terrifying. Hayley immediately understood that Bill and Leslie had not only lied about Marcus's accident, but that they had been directly implicated in a conspiracy to cover up his death. Overwhelmed with betrayal, she fled the study, tears blurring her vision as she fled to find Bill and demand answers. When Hayley confronted Bill that night, her voice trembled between rage and heartbreak. Her brother Marcus had been everything to her, her confidant, her defender, her best friend. She demanded to know the truth, how her beloved husband could lie to her about something so monstrous. Bill's face contorted, shifting from guilt to panic to desperation as he realized he could no longer maintain the facade. He tried to placate her with hollow excuses, begging her to trust him, swearing that he had always loved her and had only acted to protect them both. Hayley, however, refused to be placated, dragging out the letters to prove her point. The fragile thread of trust snapped as she accused Bill of being both core conspirator and coward. Pulling out his own phone, Bill dialed Leslie's number with shaking fingers, demanding she come over immediately. Leslie's arrival minutes later did little to calm the storm. The two of them, cornered by Hayley's incredulous questions and Marcus's hidden letters, attempted to construct a narrative, a tragic accident born of Marcus's own reckless driving. But Hayley, equipped with her brother's voice frozen in time on the pages and her keen journalistic instincts, recognized the lies for what they were. The trio's heated confrontation lasted until the early hours of dawn, with Bill and Leslie's pleas of, "We did what we had to," echoing hollowly against the walls, unable to pierce Hayley's outrage. Shaken by betrayal and fearing for her own safety, Hayley spent days oscillating between despair and indignation. She packed a small bag and fled to her childhood home, seeking solace in memories of simpler times before her brother vanished and Bill's lies enveloped her. Late into the night, she reread Marcus's letters, deciphering his final words alongside her own childhood handwriting, the tender pleas for family unity seared into her memory. Each line, Colonel, as her father's old dog who had died when she was 12, suddenly loomed at the edge of her consciousness, another casualty, she'd wondered, of Bill and Leslie's reckless ambitions. Fear gnawed at her. Was she next on their ledger of liabilities? Did Bill truly love her, or was she merely another token in a game to shield his darker secrets? While Hayley sought refuge, Bill and Leslie's world unraveled. Rogue couriers delivered anonymous letters to news outlets, exposing the damning evidence of Marcus's death. Journalistic blogs buzzed with theories linking Bill's sudden rise in fortune with an unsolved crime from years ago. The police quietly reopened the investigation under pressure from an anonymous tipster claiming knowledge of Bill and Leslie's involvement. Bill's trusted advisors abandoned ship, his bank accounts were frozen pending inquiry, and Leslie's board of directors demanded her immediate resignation. The once glamorous life Bill and Leslie had built began to crack under the weight of suspicion and public outrage. Even their philanthropic partners, unaware of the tombstones hidden beneath the foundation of Bill's empire, recoiled in horror at the allegations. Their carefully curated reputations dissolved overnight, revealing the stench of corruption at the core. Hayley, observing the collapse from a distance, felt vindication mix with sorrow. Her grief over her brother's brutal death was eclipsed by a wretched realization. Bill had never truly loved her, and Leslie had never truly cared for anyone but themselves. She privately wrestled with whether to publicly release the letters, aware that exposing them could destroy every trace of what remained of Bill and Leslie's crumbling empire. But the memory of Marcus's tormented final words, how he begged them to think of him as more than just a liability, propelled her toward one conclusion. In her living room, illuminated by the dim glow of a single lamp, Hayley drafted her statement. It detailed Marcus's investigation into Bill and Leslie's finances, the timeline of that fateful night, and the documented evidence she had uncovered. Her handwriting shook as she recounted the night Marcus died, refusing to let her tears erase her brother's voice from the pages. Determined to honor Marcus's legacy, Hayley resolved to restore the truth to the public before Bill could manipulate the narrative again. On a crisp winter morning, Hayley held a press conference in the small community center where Marcus had first reported his exposé on local corruption. Reporters pressed microphones to her face as she stepped up to the podium, her cheeks still pink from the cold. She introduced herself as Hayley Morrison, journalist, Marcus's sister, and Bill's soon-to-be ex-wife. The silence that fell over the crowded room was heavy with anticipation. Hayley's voice trembled only at first, as she recounted each detail: Marcus's tire tracks in that dark alley, the injuries inconsistent with a drunk driving accident, The blockchain of text messages proving Leslie had orchestrated surveillance on Marcus, her resolve solidified. She ended her statement with a single, unwavering sentence: "I seek a divorce from William Thatcher, and I demand justice for Marcus Morrison." Cameras flashed, pens scribbled, and Bill's carefully constructed world tumbled into fragments as Hayley walked from the podium, her head held high though her heart felt hollow. When news of the press conference spread, Bill's phone buzzed incessantly with calls he could not answer. His loyal PR team disbanded, hushed that the scandal was too far-reaching to spin. He watched helplessly from his study, now surrounded by police evidence technicians cataloging his belongings while news anchors aired Hayley's confession to live audiences. Leslie, seated beside him at the mahogany desk they once shared in conspiratorial alliance, stared at the wall as if it had betrayed her with its silence. The walls, once adorned with accolades and art pieces, now reflected the harsh glare of overhead bulbs as detectives sifted through documents. In that moment, Bill realized he had married his own undoing. He turned to Leslie, rage and regret contorting his features. Yet Leslie's eyes, cold and unrepentant, met his with something that felt like contempt, as though he had been the greater fool, ensnared by his own failed ambitions. The partnership that had once promised limitless power now lay in ruins, their bond severed by the glare of truth. Hayley's divorce was swift and unopposed. In court, Bill's lawyers admitted to discrepancies in the original case file about Marcus's death, citing unintentional suppression of evidence, but refusing to name Leslie as an accomplice. Hayley, resolute in her quest for accountability, demanded full transparency, legal transcripts revealing how the police had been misled. Forensic reports showing that tire marks on Marcus's car did not match skid patterns of a typical drunk driver case, and financial records indicating that large sums had been funneled into Leslie's offshore accounts in the days following Marcus's death. Under the weight of the evidence and the publicly circulating letters, Bill had no choice but to agree to a settlement. He relinquished his claim to Hayley's prenup and agreed to cover her legal fees, while Hayley pledged to testify should any criminal charges emerge against Leslie or him. As she signed the final documents, the judge banged the gavel, sealing not only the divorce, but the end of Bill's reputation and the dissolution of their dark partnership. In the aftermath, Hayley moved into a modest apartment by the waterfront, her heart still bruised, but her spirit unbroken. She dedicated herself to completing Marcus's unfinished work, uncovering corruption in local government, advocating for victims of unsolved crimes, and forging her own path as a tenacious investigative journalist. Her byline appeared on exposés that hailed her as the journalist who dared to confront power, a stark contrast to the young bride who once believed in love and fairy tales. As for Bill and Leslie, Bill retreated into solitary confinement within his crumbling mansion, his business empire reduced to a shell of lawsuits and creditors. Leslie fled the country under an alias, using the remainder of their illicit fortune to establish a new life far from prying eyes. Yet wherever she tried to run, the shadow of Marcus's ghost, the ghost of that winter night, haunted her every step, reminding her that some sins could not be buried beneath layers of lies. Years later, Hayley, now renowned for her unflinching truth-telling, published her brother's story as the centerpiece of a best-selling book. In interviews, she often spoke of forgiveness, but never forgetting, of harnessing grief to serve justice. When asked if her heart had healed, she would press her hand to her chest and reply, "Marcus's voice lives here, urging me forward." And in the quiet moments before dawn, as she sat at her desk penning the final chapter of her book, Hayley would sometimes glimpse a vision of Bill and Leslie, two figures, once inseparable, now fractured and haunted by their own crimes. She recalled their faces, Bill's regretful eyes and Leslie's cold, empty stare. Neither had been able to outrun the past, for the gates of truth, once opened, allowed no true escape.